Hey everyone, welcome back to the Successful Lead Generating Coaches Show. My name is Arfan and I'm here with a special guest today for interview. I have Kam Snow with me. Cam, how's it going today, brother?
It's going good, man. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, awesome. Very cool. I'm excited to have Cam here. I connected with Cam too many years to remember because it was during COVID and it was that unique time where months were years and years were decades. So I feel like I've known him for for quite a while now, although it's been a few years.
Man, that's
And
so
what
true.
really attracted me to you when I first came into contact is you were naturally just a very gifted storyteller. Your posts
Mm.
were very captivating. Everything you wrote was like, whoa, man, this guy actually knows how to share his heart and not just write something for fluff. And I was really
Mm.
attracted to that. Then I got to know you a bit. I actually met you in person, hear you speak on stage, and I'm
Yeah.
super excited for our topic today, which we're going to be talking about unmasking your message, how
Mm.
storytelling creates resonance and revenue. And I love this so much
Ooh.
because it's a really powerful a tool to have, an arsenal, a technique, so to say, a way of actually just being, which is going to allow us as coaches to be able to communicate with our audience in a really powerful way. So I'm excited to get a refresher on this because I know I've been in your world for a bit, heard you speak on
Hmm.
stage and got a little glimpse of this. So I'm excited to dive in more. And
Yeah.
so a bit about Cam. So from what
Mm.
I know about you and what we talked about is that you're and not just, but you're a copywriter, a
Hmm.
storytelling coach, and
Hmm.
you've helped clients generate over $15 million in revenue through authentic story-based marketing. So that's a
Yes.
1.5, right? We're
Hmm.
talking about 1.5 million, which is a great amount of revenue. And with your background in political advertising and nearly a decade in the online industry, so I know you're now focusing on helping coaches and consultants really
Hmm.
work towards crafting resonant messages that really builds trust, drives sales, and aligns with who they are. But I want
Yeah.
you to kind of tell us from your own words, what got you in this seat right now? Sum it up for us in a quick 2, 3 minutes if you
Mm.
could.
Yeah. That's a great question. Um, I would say that what kind of brought me here in terms of like the career trajectory is I did spend 6 years in politics, and we can go deep on that if we want. Left, kind of began a journey of kind of figuring out who am I, and then came into the online marketing space. And in that space, it's been a kind of fertile soil for growing um, a, uh, a more clarified skill set and
Mhm.
clarified mission and purpose around storytelling, and specifically for women entrepreneurs, women female coaches, and consultants. Um, and there's a lot of different directions we can go in terms of exploring like how that came about and what the work is, but
Yeah.
fundamentally the the marketer in me and the coach in me are working together now for the first time in my career, and
Love
that's
that.
kind of what brings us to this concept of unmasking your message, actually.
Yeah, I love that. So that just shares a little bit about your journey, because like you made a pivot essentially from I think I caught
Yeah.
a little bit what you're saying there was that you were with political advertising. You said you did that for 6 years,
Professionally, I did it for
professionally for
six
six
years,
years.
but I grew up in the
Gotcha.
industry.
Grew up in the industry,
Yeah.
and then you went through a journey where you asked the question, "Who am I?"
Hmm.
And you dove
Yeah.
deep and found yourself, and then from there you pivoted into coaching entrepreneurs on storytelling, where we are
Yeah,
now.
let's unpack it, because there's that question right there, who am I, is a question I don't think you ever stop asking. And as I've gotten older, I've become less attached to the answer. As of just
Hmm.
my faith and my relationship with God has changed and deepened into understanding that what I would have conceived of, this is my identity 10 years ago, like this is who I am, um,
Hmm.
was really a collection of activities that I would do, right? Like, who are you? Oh, well, I play guitar, right? Or
Gotcha.
I write stories, right? Those are things that I do, but it's just a reflection of who I am. And it's part of the growth process, I think, to come into closer contact with who you actually are, which is not the most comfortable journey. which is why I
Hmm.
think a lot of people don't ask the question on the level that you have to. Um, so when, referencing the political world, that was like the first time that I began asking that question. And
Hmm.
I was, let's see, this is like 2016 that I left the industry.
Yeah.
And so I'd been working in there for 6 years. And I was like, you know, I have an opportunity here to work in the internet marketing industry. Kind of came out of nowhere. I was following this
Hmm.
guy online and started seeing some of his journey, what he was talking about. And I was sitting on the couch with Carla, my wife. This is like 2015, 2016. And I'm like, wouldn't it be crazy if I applied for this job that he just posted? And like, as I'm saying it, like the idea to apply for the job didn't even occur to me. It was just like, that would be something nice. Because I was so practiced in having desires of what I actually like, what my soul really wanted, and just discounting them and not taking action.
Hmm.
And Carla gave me one of those looks and probably a pep talk as well, to be honest. That kind of was like, yeah, I should let me just do it. Let me just apply. Um, and I got the job and I felt joy and excitement. And
Hmm.
I had moved through probably 6 different jobs in the political sector, and each one to me was just a job. And I didn't
Ah, I
know
see.
what joy and your work felt like until I left that industry. Because when I left the industry, I also left my community of origin.
Hmm.
And it was a really
Hmm.
significant move that I didn't really understand at the time. Because, like I said, I grew up in politics. So my dad worked in the political consulting industry.
Hmm.
And I actually worked at the same office as him for a couple of years at one point. And then a lot of the people that went to our church were also very politically active. So I was steeped in politics and church from the very beginning, and so the two were very closely knit for me. So when I stepped out on my own, I had never made friends with somebody who was not a conservative Christian, and I was almost
Oh,
25 years old. I'd never
wow.
been friends with somebody who didn't look, believe, talk, and sound like me, largely.
Hmm.
Um, with a few notable exceptions, most of my friends and community was like white
Yeah.
and Christian. Um, and so leaving that and coming to the internet marketing space where there was a much broader variety of viewpoints
Hmm.
and people,
Lovely.
it was quite a culture shock for me
Hmm.
to like move from like this kind of conservative Christian bubble that I had stayed in after high school and after college in my work and in my career, and I
Hmm.
left it at that point. It was like my first really going out into the world.
Wow.
And it was like a growing up process at 24 years old.
Wow, that's amazing. You left that the bubble, so to say, that you're in, the somewhat perceived safetiness of that bubble into something
Yeah,
that was really taking that leap of faith, that deep dive into something that was
totally.
totally different from what you have,
Yeah, yeah.
which also makes a lot of sense, I guess now why the title of our talk is called Unmasking Your Message, because I can imagine there was a lot of mask or layers or identity. Like someone says they're a guitar player, that's not really
Yeah.
true who you are. It's just a mask of how we show up to
Right.
and others perceive us.
Hmm.
So tell me in our talk on unmasking your message, what does that mean to you and why is it so crucial for coaches and consultants
Mm.
now?
Yeah. Yeah. I want to give some context to the phrase unmasking your message as well, because you brought up a really good point of like, being a guitar player is a mask. Because your masks are um they're fine. Like there's nothing wrong with the mask. You know what I'm saying? Um they serve a purpose and we all use and cycle through many different masks. And that's fine. The problem becomes when you confuse who you actually are at the core, the imago Dei, the image of God in you. That is your true self, and you confuse that with one of the masks that you have created. And some of the masks that are like a layer deeper than the one we just talked about is like perfectionism or the lone wolf mask. Like I'm always alone, even in a crowded room, or the martyr mask. I'm going to sacrifice myself so that others can have something. Which the martyr mask, something that I've lived with for a long time. And when I first learned about this as a mask in 2019, I was like, that's awesome that I am that benevolent and caring that I sacrifice myself so others may have something, not realizing that none of that was true. Which brings us to unmasking your message. I'll give you a little context there and we'll tie that up in a minute.
Yeah.
Unmasking your message, like what does that actually mean? There is a misconception that has lived in the industry and in the world for a very long time that will probably continue to live that your message is your words. Your message, and especially when you look at like a business and a marketing context, your messaging is like the words you are saying to get people to pay attention and then take action to move along the next step in the funnel, which sounds so clinical
Hmm.
and like flat.
Yeah.
When the reality is that if you are putting out the right words, but the way that you act in the context of how your audience perceives you, um, is that it's not going to matter. If you've attracted the kinds of clients that you don't like, and you think that fixing your words is going to attract clients you do like, you're not going to attract clients you do like because the clients that you really want are not watching just your words. They're watching who you are. And unmasking your message is understanding deeply that your truest message that will like really get to the heart of that person that's going to reach somebody is synonymous with your medicine. In other words, your truest, best message is going to help people heal. And it is not something you just say, it is something that you do. And the context for this is story time right here. The unmask your message kind of concept um, came to me and Carla earlier this year, but I didn't really understand what it meant, to be honest. This is like March of this year. We ran a little event, a 3-day challenge called Unmask Your Message. And in the middle of that event, um, I got actually, so this was last year. This is last year we ran this. We were doing a training and I got a message from a client who was like, hey, so and so wants to talk to you. So and so being the client, it was their assistant. And I'm in the middle of the training talking about like having an abundance mindset or something like that. And I get this text message from this client and immediately start spiraling into scarcity because I knew what the message was. I'd been working on the marketing for a few months. I knew what the numbers were saying and I knew what I charged. And, I could do math, right? I kind of knew what this conversation probably was. At least that's what I told myself. And so I used that as an excuse to kind of freak out internally. And we did end up having a conversation of like, hey, it doesn't look like we can continue. And that client was like, I don't know, 40% of my revenue at that time. And so I like started going into a like bit of a freak out mode, right? And that experience and everything that had happened before, because I'd lost several clients. Sorry, lost is such a loaded term. I had completed several client contracts and had not replaced those clients earlier. And I could feel inside of me that something about how I was doing my life and my business was on the verge of breaking. If you've ever had that experience where you run into a familiar crisis that you've been in a number of times where you kind of ask the question like, how did I get here again? Like,
Yeah.
how did I? how did I do this again? I said the last time that I was going to do things differently, but here I am again. Okay, clearly I haven't learned my lesson. And
Yeah.
for me, that has looked like a lot of things. But I would say that that moment of like crisis is the feeling of all of the energy in my life being sucked out and like living in an oxygenless environment
Hmm.
internally. Like I can't internally breathe and like drowning. And when
Yeah.
there is a drowning person, they try to cling to the people who that might be around them. And as we all know, you can drown the people around you.
Hmm.
And so I began living out this experience. And this is like last September is when that started. So I just completed like a year of this story that I'm telling you. And in that experience of kind of feeling like I couldn't breathe anymore, um, I went into a space where I kind of put on my blinders. I was like, I'm just going to focus on this little thing. And that little thing was like, um, let me just do what I can to take care of the kids. Got the two kids, um, get them to school, do all the things. Let me just focus on that. And then kind of like build out this story in my mind that I couldn't do the other things I wanted to do because I was just doing this,
Hmm.
which wasn't true. And that's kind of part of the story here is that I went through an experience of reaching the breaking point of a pattern that I had been living with my entire life. And I had been running my business this way,
Hmm.
which is, and everybody who is running their own business can identify with this kind of mentality, but it was always about the money I didn't have. That was the conscious awareness that I had of this pattern. The pattern is much bigger than that, but is the conscious awareness of that my focus was on all of the money, the leads, the clients, the things that I didn't have.
Hmm.
And so
Wow.
all of my life force energy was being poured into what I don't have. And as I looked back at my career and my life, that feeling and that focus was there even when I made $60,000 in a month.
Hmm.
And
Oh, it's present.
it was always present. It did not matter because it was always about, well, it's not enough to cover whatever, the thing was. And it's like, well, 60 grand isn't enough to cover 70 grand in expenses.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so I'd like constantly be creating situation that put me into overwhelm and chaos. Now, what does all this have to do with unmasking your message? Unmasking your message is not about saying the right words. It is about understanding that the most powerful part, not the only part, but the most powerful part of your message is the way in which you show up in your business and in your marketing. And that's just one example because it's actually the way you show up in your life
Gotcha. It's more
and
layered than that. It's not.
way more
It's
layered.
deeper than just looking at it from the tactical level
Yes.
of that. This is my just my business right now, but looking at it
Yeah.
more internally in terms of. And I don't want to go too deeper into some different things, but there is a circle of belief that we all have that where we either got this from some part in our early childhood, and it sort of plays out a lot
Yes. Yeah.
in our at least for me, I've identified a lot of those things and see how it plays out. And there's a pattern that repeats itself, and it's just something that is operating
Yeah.
in the automatic type of way where
Yeah.
something happens and it just triggers that exact. My brain's just like this big recorder, and it goes back to the last known event and replays that. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
that's one of my personal experience in understanding what kind of what
Yeah.
we're discussing here right now.
Exactly. I mean, you nailed it. Like it comes from previous experiences and you cannot silo your life forever. You
Hmm.
can silo your life. You can look at your life as like, well, the business is over here and everything stays over here and my marriage is over here and that stays over there and the kids stay over here. Like, no, it's all a mess. And you're lying to yourself when you say that you can silo it. And I know that that's true because I lied to myself for so long about how I
Yeah.
could silo it. And I would look at my business and be like, I need to build a business, I need to build a business, I need to build a business as I'm running a business. And right. And yet, what I was missing is that I was making that the focus of my whole life. And that was one of the shifts that really hit me over the last year because I kind of accidentally on purpose took a sabbatical.
Hmm.
And one of those things was that having kids opened up my awareness and shifted things in such a way that I've begun to see things in my marriage, in my business, in my parenting that have been there for a very long time, but that I was unwilling to see.
Hmm.
And that is unmasking. That is unmasking your message, actually doing the work to understand what is this mask and why is it here.
Gotcha.
And I began a process earlier this week of looking at that in a new way with a new therapist and all the things because fundamentally like a huge part of this is healing work
Hmm. Yeah.
and understanding some of my masks that have been presented here. And I was listening to this book where he talked about the story of Narcissus, which is a Greek myth, and it's where we get the word narcissism. And culturally, it's this idea of like you're just obsessed with yourself. And the
Hmm.
actual story is deeper than that because Narcissus has a curse placed upon him by a by someone who loved him and wanted him, and he rejected her. And she said, "May he experience the same level of unrequited love that I have." And the curse caused him that when he saw his reflection in the water and he couldn't have it,
Hmm.
he became frozen in staring at this image that he could never have and ultimately died of starvation because he
Wow.
couldn't move. And so it's this idea that like the the mask that can present in in a way that is deeply harmful to other people. Narcissism is deeply harmful. And I'm realizing parts of this, I resonate with that story of like, because the author of the book said it's more like a paralysis where you
Yeah.
just focus inward so much that you paralyze. And seeing, okay, let's rewind that back. If this is the mentality and the mindset that I am now seeing and how that shows up in my personal relationships and the inner workings of my business, let me think about how this insight has impacted how I have interacted with and the relationship that I have with my audience, the
Hmm.
relationship that I have with the people that I'm trying to serve. Because when that audience, the group of people that you have said, this is who God said I'm here to serve and to help with my skill sets, my ability, and my medicine, when you put that person, that group first in your life, instead of the people who are actually closest to you, your wife, your kids, your family, your close friends, all of that, your actual support systems, when you try and get all of the support emotionally from your audience and then
Hmm.
financially from your audience from attracting clients, it becomes lopsided and
Yeah,
it
it's
cannot
off balance.
sustain itself. It's off balance and eventually it will crash. So this is like the deeper way of unmasking and unmasking your message is understanding that you can grab a post template and throw it into ChatGPT or Claude and have it write a post for you,
Yeah.
or you can send a voice note, to Claude and it'll write a post, and that's great. Like it can get you 80% there, maybe
Hmm.
70%, depending on how you train it. Which I do use these tools for my copywriting. But if the mentality and the mindset and the energy that you're giving to AI is already like corrupted in some way, or it is
Hmm.
influenced is probably a better word, it is already influenced by things that you're unconscious of, and you create a result that you're like, this isn't what I want. It's like, well, it's because there is still an unconscious bias that comes through, and the AI is an incredible tool that will magnify and amplify and mirror back whatever you give it.
Yeah, it's
And
very true.
so it can only ever give you back what you give it.
Hmm. So let's talk a little bit like some tactical, right? So audience listening
Yeah,
right now, they're probably
get
like, you know what?
tactical.
As you're as you're talking, they can identify that there are certain patterns that keep repeating, or certain
Yeah.
things they're putting out, and they're wondering, like, well, I've changed my messaging so many times, but I'm still attracting people that that I'm just getting burned out with, or I'm just burned out from marketing that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't really
Mm-hmm.
align with my values and things like that. So, like,
Yep.
coaches right now often struggle to consistently create content that connects
Yep.
and converts.
Yep.
Where, if you were to say one thing, like the very, very tip of the iceberg, the thing that we see the most, where do you see most of them going wrong?
They're trying to create content.
Trying to
And
create
that's
content
they're
versus.
trying to create content. And as long as you are still believing that you have to create content, notice the words trying to create content. I have to create content.
Mhm,
As long as you are operating and moving from that space, then you are automatically approaching the privilege and the joy of sharing your full self with your audience as an obligation, and it already starts putting up barriers. And so the process
mhm,
of creating content becomes so highly resistant that it is exhausting and painful. Add on to that the cultural industry belief systems we have of like, this is what a good converting post is supposed to look like. And you have pain
mhm,
points and you have aspiration and you have process and all this stuff. And you have a misapplication of how to talk about pain and how to talk about pleasure, aspiration, or outcome. And when you have a misidentification of what that means and you just fill your content with too much pain, it just doesn't move anybody. It's because oftentimes it's our pain or our aversion to pain that will keep us from properly addressing and diagnosing it in someone else. So the advice is like, yes, stop trying to create content in terms of like forcing yourself to put out stuff that does not actually align with you. That does not mean that you ghost
yeah.
and abandon, because there are multiple kinds of content structures that you can use to accommodate your own needs and the needs of your business and your audience. And it's going to
Mhm,
look different for everybody. You may be the kind of person who's like, I can't get my best content out there unless I'm doing a podcast interview. I can't get
I
my
see.
best content out there unless I batch it once a month and turn it into 100 reels or something like that. Like there are different content strategies and ways
Yeah.
of doing it that are going to move you differently. And so that is a far better lever to pull on in terms of leverage for approaching and looking at why and how am I doing this content creation process. That is way more important than what you're saying.
Hmm.
Because
Makes
what
a
you're
lot of
saying
sense.
right now probably feels like kind of constipated. Like there's more that needs to be said, but you just can't get it into the words. You're like, every
Mhm,
time I try, it's just like this big feeling and vision in my head just feels flat when I put it out, either onto
mhm.
video or audio or in words. It's like it just
Yeah.
isn't touching what's in here. That is not a problem of what you're saying and what your message is. It's indicating the survival patterns that you have that are interrupting the flow of inspiration.
Hmm.
And when that happens, you can only create a very specific kind of content, and it will probably lean into scarcity. For me, when I post or create from scarcity, which by the way, you should do so that you can understand how you operate.
Yeah.
Like
Just
it is better for
go
you to
through the
post.
process.
It's better for you to post in scarcity than not at all so that you can look back when you're in a better state of mind and be like, this is what it looks like. So you can
Yeah.
recognize the signs. But I notice
Hmm.
for me, when I go into a mindset of like, oh my gosh, I need to make money, I tend to back away from what I believe my true calling is, which is to serve specific my true calling and is to do the work with my wife Carla, who's a somatic therapist, in coaching women entrepreneurs into unleashing their fullest expression and their true voice in their life and relationships and their business. That's like my heart. When I'm in
Hmm.
scarcity, I go into let me sell a copywriting offer that's very direct response driven. It's very
Hmm.
just like, it's a very like more kind of, I don't want to say masculine, but it's kind of a masculine energy, but it's like a wounded masculine, which is a
Yeah,
whole
wounded masculine
lot of
from
concepts
Black.
we could talk
Yeah.
into. Yes, wounded masculine. And I noticed, I looked at my data from like a bunch of, clients and customers over the years and found that for the most part, the clients that I have served have been like 80% women just by default of me being me. And when I go into scarcity and put out a copywriting offer, the people who buy the copywriting offer were
For
almost
guys.
100% men.
Gotcha.
I
Yeah,
was
it
like,
becomes very
interesting.
tactical. It becomes like
Super.
becomes very tactical and not so much heart center. It doesn't have that emotional feel or weight to it. So
Yeah,
what I hear is really saying, right? When someone's really out of alignment, this is the type of marketing that quickly leads to burnout, quickly leads to exhaustion, quickly leads to like, I'm not doing this anymore. Screw this. This is
totally.
not worth it. It just doesn't feel aligned. So
Yeah.
how does story based or storytelling or story based marketing prevent that from happening?
Yeah. Great question. Essentially, the way that story based marketing helps you prevent and kind of work with burnout is the most powerful storytelling that you can do is the one that is honest and
Mm,
truthful. Perry Marshall, who is, in my mind, one of the best marketers of the 21st century, said that good copywriting, the words that we put out to sell products and services, good copywriting is really just a matter of being as honest about the details as you can be. And which is like 100% true. Like if you can get more honest about the problem, what's going on, what causes it, all that. It's
mhm,
not Jedi mind tricks. Like people talk about like psychological persuasion and like the secrets of, people who built 8-figure businesses and direct
mhm,
response, all this stuff. And it's like actually the secret is to like learn how to stop lying. Which is something I told my therapist the other day is like I struggle with that in my personal life, but in my professional like copywriting, like that is where the I was able to express and live vicariously through a life of honesty for my
mhm,
clients. And honesty, like you can't write really good copy for your personal brand about the things that you're doing unless you have some honesty. And
yeah,
honesty is just like is it's not just a like a moral trait. It's a skill set. Honesty is a skill set to be able to identify what's actually in the real environment and be able to communicate it in like real time. So the way that that works with your nervous system and being able to like prevent burnout is that when you're communicating through authentic storytelling, which means that it is actually true of the feelings and perspectives that you actually hold within yourself, and you actually share your stories
mm,
from that place, then you're not getting energetic contamination and resistance
mm,
coming up in the process. When you have to not only, let's just take writing as an
mhm,
example, since I'm a copywriter, if you not only have to write the post, but on the way to writing the post, you also have to dismiss your own self. You have to suppress feelings that you're not ready to talk about or that you're afraid to talk about. You have to put down and hold down the energy of like past versions of yourself that had similar experiences as the topic of what you want to write about that are trying to warn you that it's dangerous for some reason. You've got
mhm,
all of this other stuff happening. That is how you burn out. Burnout is a poorly understood phenomenon, and like Carla could talk way more about this. Maybe we can have her on the show too, where it's just like you're trying to do something, but along the way and in the process of doing that thing, you are having to do 10 times the labor. We call it paying taxes on your energy.
mhm.
You have to
Yeah,
like you like stop paying taxes on your energy. Just clean it up so that you can actually communicate more to the point. And
yeah,
like storytelling is the fastest way to do that. And there's there are levels to that. You can process your own emotional stuff through storytelling, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the story that you post. Although
Hmm.
sometimes it is. Sometimes the story needs to be witnessed by other people for you to release some of the energy around it and get some perspective.
Yes.
And I found for me, social media is one of the ways that I do that. It's kind of accidentally a little bit how I built my brand. Is just kind of doing that. And, that's the process of unmasking your message.
Awesome. I love that. Hey, everyone listening, me and Cam could probably talk another hour or two about all this and go into the many, many layers of even giving you a specific thing you can do right now to help you to, if something comes up, to regulate the nervous system to be able to put some of these past versions of ourselves, so to say. I use that example
Mm-hmm.
sometimes because Jensen Cherub puts it in her book you're a badass at making money. So it's very
Mm.
common in the coaching world. She talks about you have a little prince inside of you, but we all have that, and it may not be 7 year old, maybe a 9 year
Yeah.
old, 10 year old, 12 year old, some sort of time there where it happens, and that version is very much so telling you don't put this or don't say that. It wants you to please or it wants you to do a number of other things
Yeah.
that ends up sabotaging what you truly desire and truly really want to even put out. And
Yeah.
we could probably dive a lot into a lot of these concepts, but I actually want to do something better. I want to actually give you guys an opportunity to even connect with Cam and his wife Carla to be able to actually now do the work. Because it's not something where, you know, Cam could tell us this right now in this short interview, and then you go and then from day
Mm-hmm.
one on, now you're this amazing, confident, and amazing, authentic story writer who's just
Yeah.
resonating with everybody. You come across
Mm-hmm.
everyone is
Mm-hmm.
resonating, and you're in
Yep.
alignment. It takes work to get there, and as you start peeling off, you start realizing there's other things that come up that we have to continuously work on. There's one part of the healing journey, I believe, is that it's somewhat of a continuous journey because as we unlock parts of ourselves and as we really reframe and regulate our system, our brain offers us something else that
Mm.
we just didn't realize. There's a bit of a continuous journey, and I've seen this in my own marketing, my own entrepreneur journey, from starting this podcast and having interviews
Mm.
and putting certain messaging out there. It's been one of those things where I've had to take a lot of moments that are quiet to myself with God
Mm-hmm.
and also with
Mm-hmm.
part of the community. So with that being said, it would be a disservice if I didn't give you a great resource to be able to work with. So Cam, please let everyone know what's the best way to get a hold of you, get in contact with you, and
Yeah.
be able to take this further.
Yeah. So we didn't talk too much about this kind of side of things, although we referenced it. But the primary place where you can kind of experience more of what Carla and I do together is called the Recovering Christian Entrepreneur. And it's a community right now. It exists primarily on Facebook. Um, and there will be a link in the show notes, but it's bit.ly/RCE, all caps, and then lowercase group.
I'll put
For
the
some
link.
reason, Bitly has a thing about capital letters. So it's capital R, capital C, capital E, and then group. And that'll take you to the Facebook group for the Recovering Christian Entrepreneur. And our focus there, and the reason why that's kind of like the community that we're called to curate, is when you begin the process of deconstructing, like sometimes and oftentimes it starts with faith, but everything that we talked about in this episode is about deconstructing beliefs and then reconstructing something healthier. And so that's like what we do there. And while it's called the Recovering Christian, that's simply because that's my story and that's Carla's story of growing up in, Christianity. But anybody who has grown up and or been impacted by any organization that kind of subverted your own authority, whether it was a religion or a coaching program, because we've recovered from both. Um, this is kind of the place for you to understand what your true message is and how to stop paying taxes on your energy so that you can really do your best work and have your best relationships.
Love
So
that.
we do I forget what we do in there. We do Holy Spirit breathwork, which is a specific container of breathwork to help heal religious trauma that is now impacting you in your business. And then we do live streams every week that are around some of these business topics and breathwork and things. So that is where you can find
Awesome.
us.
Awesome. So what I'll do, guys, I'll put that link in the show notes. You probably get it somewhere on this video. The link is plenty available in the email, wherever. So click on that, join the group, and connect with Cam and his wife Carla. And this is part of a journey. And one of the things is, if you look at some of the most successful coaches in the space, and you'll look at their messaging, you're going to look at it from a different lens, and you'll start seeing and understanding everything that we've talked about here as far as the energy that's really going in with the message versus just putting something to post for post's sake, but rather
Totally.
putting something that's really mission and purpose driven and
Mm-hmm.
has a real intentionality about conveying your actual purpose and what you're looking to do here, with your work. So, Cam,
Yep.
thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate the conversation. And everyone, don't forget to connect. And if you did enjoy the show, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, give it a like, give it a share with some another entrepreneur that you know that is maybe struggling or thinking about they want to up level their messaging or really be authentic and true to their messaging. Share this episode with them. With that being
Mm.
said, we'll catch you all in the next one. Thanks so much.
See you
Bye.
guys.